What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to go over 4 questions I have for the future of God of War. And this is really what will they do now, right? What's the plan after Ragnarok? So this will generally contain spoilers. So if you haven't beaten the game yet, obviously be aware of that. So let's start with the first thing, and that is, will they answer unanswered questions? And so these are directly like Ragnarok specific things. Now, I do think in terms of like sequels and spin-offs, we'll talk about that in a second, but I'm talking about things like, what's the future of Sindri? Is there a future for a character like Sindri? The Horn, right? I made a specific video on that. You've seen a lot of other, like Captain Kuba and all them. They've all talked about the Horn as well. They still have not given us an answer. And Cory Barlog says maybe one day there will be an answer. One day he'll come around to it. So that is generally the first question I have is, will we ever get answers to these unanswered questions from Ragnarok? I think the answer is most likely going to be yes. I guess Sindri is an interesting like middle ground where you could very much leave his character where it is, and I don't know if people would be necessarily okay with it. I think he's a very complex character, and how they ended his character in the story is also pretty complex, but you know, it is something that if you wanted to leave it, I wouldn't fault you. If you wanted to continue it, you know, it depends on if the future games have anything to do with the Norse realm or none at all. Number 2 is more of the behind the scenes, the Sony Santa Monica angle, and that is, how long until we get the next game from this franchise? Again, whether it is a sequel or a spin-off of some sort, how long do they make us wait? And this one's interesting too, right? Because you had a break between, well, you have to count Ascension. I think counting Ascension is honestly a necessary move, but you still had quite a break from Ascension to God of War 2018, right? And then even between God of War 3 and Ascension, there was that little period of time as well. So did that enhance God of War 2018? I feel like it did. I feel like we all felt there was a long period of time away from Kratos and away from God of War, right? The game franchise. And I think that helped not only when it comes back, but when it does things very, very different. The one-shot camera, changing the fighting style, giving his character more depth, right? All of these things, I think, hit us pretty hard, but also hit us hard because it had been quite a while since we'd seen anything, let alone the fact that they had changed some of the stuff since the last time we had seen it, right? So how long until the next God of War game / spinoff? I don't think it's going to be as long as it was between Ascension and God of War 2018. And that's mainly because I do think they have branched it off, or I don't know, just made it so at the end of Ragnarok, they've made it available to them where they could do spin-offs as well as sequels. So now, again, I've always brought up Spider-Man because I just really do believe it's a good comparison. There should be no 5-6 years, I mean, there can be, till the next major God of War game. That can definitely happen. But in the meantime, we could easily get spin-off games to fill the gap. And that is honestly the path I think they're probably going to go down. So with that in mind, let's talk about that. Sequel or spin-off? That's obviously a question I think a lot of people have. I think the more time that's gone on and the more people that have actually finished the game, I do generally see more people saying like Atreus spin-off game rather than Atreus full-on God of War game, just from what I've seen, and I very much could not be seeing things right. That's definitely possible. But I do think that is the path that I would choose to go down, where in 2 or so years, you give us an Atreus spin-off game, which continues his character. And then if you wanted to do, and I imagine this would be the case as well, the next God of War game, you're still playing as Kratos, but maybe it's a mix. You play as Kratos and Atreus. It's maybe more 50-50, and the reasoning is probably still Atreus' reasoning why the game is going on, right? You go to a different realm, it's not in the Norse realm, and you continue it from there. And that's the next big God, and you could still call it God of War. I know I've mentioned this before, not everybody agrees with this, but I've mentioned God of War. Like, the God of War is Kratos, it's not Atreus. So if you give Atreus a game, it's probably God of, and then you have something else. You could do God of War, you know, subtitle. I guess that is possible because it would kind of fall under the umbrella of the franchise of God of War. I mean, I would understand that, I suppose, but it's an interesting thing to kind of keep in mind. So I think we'll honestly get both. I really, really do. I think you don't establish Atreus as much as you did, really, in both games, but obviously Ragnarok was the big push. You don't do that to leave his character for good. They specifically set him up towards the future, kind of wrapped Kratos up, and then at the same time, because of Kratos's just his character and who he is and his impact on PlayStation and gamers and all that stuff, I just don't think you ever let that character go, or at least you don't do it right now. So I think we're going to get both a spin-off game, which would be the next game. So what's the next God of War game? I think it'll be an Atreus spin-off game. And then the next major God of War game, I think would be, after that. It would be both of them back together. The spin-off game wouldn't have Kratos. Those would all be kind of my predictions right now. And the final thing is, what big changes will they make? So, I mentioned this earlier where it was kind of a two-part thing. They come back and they hit us hard years after the last time we saw it. And, a lot of people actually kind of skipped over Ascension, so I don't like to not count it. But if you were to not count it, from God of War 3, which I believe was 2010, to God of War 20, it was 8 years after, for those that skipped Ascension, right? So not only was it a super long length of time, but also, again, all of those major changes to, honestly, I think the plan was to reinvent the franchise. And guess what? They successfully did it. They absolutely did. They took a shot. It was not guaranteed to work at all, but they took a shot to try to reinvent the game, and it actually, worked. So the question is, will they have to do that again? I feel like the answer is yes, but not in the same ways. I think you obviously keep the emotional, more kind of grounded nature of the storytelling and of the characters. I think you probably keep the one-shot camera, and you may even keep the core gameplay, because I do think the core gameplay is really good. I love the hack and slash a lot. I just feel like the gaming industry has moved away from that, and as long as that doesn't come back, and I don't say that as like a good or bad thing, I'm simply saying if games continue to not do hack and slash, I can't see how God of War would do it, with like the future of it. In terms of like some of the adjustments they can make, probably along the lines of eliminating a lot of those like shimmying sections, right? Not having us go under a tunnel or under a rock or shimmying against a wall, those kind of things. Eliminating a lot of that would be, I think, beneficial. And I don't know if they were able to, obviously they weren't able to do it, right, in the time. In fact, they only added to it in Ragnarok. So I would say some of the more minute-to-minute things you're experiencing in the game, those are the things I'd imagine they have to change. But it's interesting because there could be the question, like, would they do something else that's, like, wildly different? I don't really know what else you could. Like, there's different genres, you could go into, or even with combat, but I really feel like they've found a sweet spot, and I don't think you necessarily need to change what you've already created. Plus, having an Atreus spin-off game, and if you do that within like 2 years, you're not going to change a lot of those fundamental, the one-shot camera, that kind of stuff. You're not going to change that. Now you have to work on the other stuff, again, kind of making that minute-to-minute moments in the game better. So those would be my 4 questions. Let me know, guys, the answers to them if you want in the comments, or any questions you may have for the franchise. Let me know. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.